It's an awful lot of introduction for James Appleton. I think over a number of years that I've been with the Chamber, James has constantly come in and given us some amazing updates and some inside info. And we do like a nice little bit of gossip that's going on, James. So I hope you've got something planned for us to let us know some insights into what's happening. I think it's something to be proud of, that things are still happening in our area, and gives us something else to concentrate on, look to the future with some sort of positivity. So anyway, James, I'm sure that you have plenty to say, so I'm not going to take up any of the time, and I hand over to you now, and I think you're going to do a presentation. So.
Thank you, Tina, and good morning to everyone. Yeah, I'm actually in the office today, and for those of you who don't know, my full title is Head of Planning and Development, but as Tina and others might know, that's changed over the years, but I've been at Adur and Worthing for some years, effectively as the Head of Planning role. So I will share my screen in a moment. I just wanted to sort of clarify that under me now are the sort of planning functions, planning policy, development management, dealing with all planning applications, building control, and about 18 months ago handed the wonderful service of land charges. So for those of you buying or selling, that's a service that now does come under me, and I'm liaising with some estate agents just to perhaps clarify what our turnaround times are, because there were certainly concerns a couple of years ago. That service has been inundated over the last few months with the stamp duty holiday, and so they're the main functions that I look after for the council under direction of Martin Randall as Director of Economy. And without further ado, I will just share my screen, and hopefully this is successful. And what I propose to do is run through just some of the key developments across Adur and Worthing, but start off talking about Worthing's local plan, which is coming to fruition after a significant period of consultation engagement with all sorts of stakeholders over the last 4 years. So hopefully everyone can see that presentation. Tracy, if you can give me a nod, I can see you. I can't see anyone else. Right, thank you for that. So that's who I am. So this is the front cover of the new local plan. I have talked about the local plan before, and it's a really important document, albeit the challenge for Worthing, as I've said on many a times before, is the huge housing pressures, the lack of land to deliver new employment and housing development, and significant needs. We have this year, or for this local plan, I should say, really looked at a very innovative approach in terms of graphics, use of a local graphic designer to really help us shape the plan and present it in a very different way. There is a hell of a lot of text in the plan, but what we've tried to do is to base this around the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, and really look at how we can bring forward sustainable development in the town, really pushing the margins in terms of pushing developers to be more sustainable in terms of construction materials and energy and power. And through that sort of golden thread running through that the plan is we are going to try and maximize development where we can because of our complete lack of land. There's just some images of the plan. It's going to Joint Strategic Committee next week. It's already been to Planning Committee, and then full council in December will hopefully sign off the plan for the last stage consultation early next year. But that consultation really is on questions of soundness. So those representations that we receive in the 8-week consultation early next year will go straight to government, and we will then hold an examination in public to consider the issues. So, and this is a plan I've shown a few times in various different ways of showing this plan, but effectively we've got the sea to the south. We've got very little land on our boundaries with Adur and Arran, and the green trees there are the national park, which mean that actually our development sites, and we're only releasing a very limited number of development sites, and they're the dark brown edge of town development sites. So really the opportunity to meet our housing needs, our future housing needs, are very limited. So just in terms of those needs, and there's lots of talk about how the government sets the standard approach for working out what your future housing needs are, what's known as a standard methodology. Currently, for Worthing, using the latest government standard methodology, we should be delivering 15,000 new homes over the next 16 years. With the best will in the world and releasing those limited greenfield sites and maximising density within the built-up area, we're only going to be provided just over 4,000, which means a 10,000 shortfall. That's a significant shortfall. So whilst there are lots of issues about policies and sustainability policies, the planning inspector, which will be appointed to look at our local plan, will just be interested in, so have you done enough to meet future housing needs? If you're going to end up with a 10,000 shortfall, that's going to be the real point of challenge. And of course, many of you will be aware that one of the sites that we're not developing, this is the land that's known as Chatmore Farm, but it's basically the open fields north of Goring railway station. That's the railway running along, and along the top is the A259. So this is a current application by Persimmon Homes. And just going back to this plan, that's the site there. We're in the plan seeking to protect these areas, the Goring north and south gaps, and also Brooklands here to the east of the town. And then obviously the rest of the dark green is national park, so we can't plan anything there. They're a separate planning authority. So Chatmore Farm is a site owned by Persimmon Homes. The application is for 475 dwellings. They're arguing and will argue to any local plan inspector that the council's not been proactive enough, is not delivering enough housing, and despite the landscape concerns about developing this site, housing need should override any landscape considerations on this site. So it'll be a really interesting discussion on that. I think we're up to about 1,200 letters of objection to the application. We're being bombarded with objections. We had a lot of support for the local plan spatial strategy, which is very much let's protect these sensitive green gaps that do help prevent this sort of coalescence along the coast of development. But we'll see, the inspector will have to look at our local plan and decide whether this site should be included or not. They are proposing the overhead lines, power lines to be put underground, and they're protecting this land as open space adjacent to the 259. But these white boxes are the 475 dwellings planned. So it'd be really interesting to see what happens with the local plan. I'd urge you to have a look at the document. You know, it is, I have to say, a very readable, more readable than many local plans I've picked up over the last few years. And we are trying to have a very clear strategy about increasing densities where we can, but protecting these sensitive gaps on the edge of our settlement, Worthing settlement anyway. So in terms of this list, I was just going to run through some of the key development sites. Happy to take questions, as Tracy's indicated at the end, but I'll just canter through some of these main big strategic sites across Adur and Worthing, as I said. So in terms of one of the sites that was shown on the local plan is currently a green space, and that's at Fulbeck Avenue. There's been lots of publicity about this scheme. Haven't granted planning permission. We're still trying to deal with drainage issues on the site, but members subject to those drainage issues being resolved have approved Bocklocks plans for a modular build scheme, 150 dwellings, 30% affordable, in a fanning out in a sort of or having these blocks of flats in a parkland setting overlooking a lake, which you can just see to the left of the screen there. So although this is a site not currently allocated. It was previously allocated as part of the West Durrington development, and this and plus further land at West Durrington has come forward in advance of the local plan. That's really a way that we can show an inspector that we have taken a proactive stance, that some sites that are in the built up area but excluded from development in the last plan should come forward early because of our significant housing needs. So really quite an innovative scheme by Bocklock, using a modular build to create low-cost homes. They're looking at the price entry point being affordable for key workers. So in addition to the 30%, the starting prices would be for these modular flats, something that hopefully many residents of town could afford, and I'm sure they would be very attractive flats once built. So 150 there. There's just some images of the scheme. As I say, it's sort of the intention is for a high quality landscape sort of setting for these blocks of flats. And this is effectively Fulbrook Avenue that serves the 700 dwellings at West Durrington. So in terms of some of the other recent developments, and probably has been mentioned by my colleagues in other talks to many of you and to the Chamber perhaps previously, but we've granted planning permission recently in the last few months for this integrated care centre. This is actually where the test and trace centre has just opened up on the car park at Stoke Abbott Road. So this is the partnership project. Council's been working very closely with a number of health authorities to move the Shelley Road Medical Centre to this site, and a number of other health partners. There'll be a pharmacy just in this picture here at the far end, and a number of health services being provided from the site. Quite a dramatic design. Members were very supportive, and it's a site that really, as a large car park, has been pretty underutilised, and again an example of a brownfield site that we really need to do more to look at increasing density, so replacing the car park with a multi-storey car park behind this integrated care centre. And work is due to start early next year on this site. So they've done the archaeological investigation. Obviously we've got the test and trace there for a few months, but we will be starting next year on building out this integrated care centre. So I have to show Teville Gate because Tina, I should count up how many presentations I've done and how many times have I mentioned Teville Gate. And although there was quite a bit of excitement and everyone was very pleased to get another planning permission through earlier this year, the legal agreement was never signed. The owners of the site, although were very positive throughout the process that they would be developing the site, very shortly after getting the resolution to approve, it started appearing and being touted around as a potential site to be sold with planning permission. So there's some of the images that are probably shown before, but it's highly likely this will never be built in this form. And the council, as you've seen from some of the headlines, are working in partnership with a strategic housing partner to bring forward a scheme on this site, and Joint Strategic Committee recently considered a report in connection with that matter. And I think it's the council just enough is enough. We need to take a far more proactive approach. We have had no ownership of the site. We've had the leasehold for the car park. That's all, the multi-storey car park that was demolished. But our interest in the site has been very minimal. But obviously we're now looking at taking a financial stake in the site and helping to facilitate. And I've already started some discussions with the developer. We're looking at putting a planning application in before the end of this financial year. So hopefully by the end of March, we will have a revised scheme where we can actually get something built on this site. And it's encouraging that the council has recognised that as one of the key sites next to our principal railway station, that we really need to be bringing forward development on the site. Obviously, you've seen that Teville Gate House has been built, and that's the HMRC, still intending to move into that. It's being fitted out now. Slight delay on the project, but only by a couple of months, and it will be handed over to HMRC. So great to see that, you know, investment, as Tina says, is still going on in the town, and people are prepared to still build despite the challenging sort of financial climates that we find ourselves in. I mean, in terms of Templegate House, you know, and a lot of our developments, you know, the construction industry has been working really hard despite the sort of initial lockdown, but all through this second lockdown, been working hard. And we've been working with a number of developers and contractors to make sure that these developments can continue despite having to maintain social distancing and everything else. So the other big scheme that's got permission that you'll see in the papers recently is the Union Place development, 169 flats, 3 to 4 screen cinema, multi-storey car park, restaurants and retail parking, and a really significant development in the heart of the town. Took a number of months on this scheme, and again the challenges of trying to accommodate high density and sensitive town centre sites with listed buildings. There's that wonderful view down to St Paul's, grade 2 star listed building, former Methodist chapel, which clearly the discussions with Historic England, although it was only an outline application, and we as a council want to go forward now with London Continental Railways to find a development partner to build out the scheme. As an outline application and as a planning authority, I'm quite separate from the council from that perspective. So although we were applying to ourselves, there were a number of months negotiations to try and get enough design details so that we could be satisfied that this would be an appropriate scale of development for the site. So although it's an outline, we did have significant level of detail to demonstrate how you could break down the mass of the perimeter buildings that you can see leading down to St Paul's. These buildings were lowered in scale significantly. The key challenge, I think, was then trying to break up the mass, and this frontage onto the high street was pushed back with a nice public realm improvement along the frontage, scope for tree planting. And this was reduced from 8-9 stories eventually down to what you see there is 5 with 1 setback floor. The tower in the background will be interesting. There are lots of discussions with design review panel about the appropriateness of a tower, and actually Historic England worked with us to lower the scale of perimeter buildings, but what was 11 stories then went up to 14 stories. But it is an outline application. There are very clear design codes to make sure we get really high quality development. And if we do have a tall building, as now indicated, then it's going to have to be of that exemplar design and finish in high quality materials. So just some other views, and on the corner is the hotel that's planned. Interesting in terms of quite a bit of hotel interest, despite the current hospitality sector in a bit of meltdown because of pandemic, but there is still, as we move forward, looking for a development partner, still interest. Certainly Premier Inn were hugely successful on the seafront, and we have had interest from hotel operators. So really interesting to see whether we can get hotel operator interested as part of a redevelopment of the Union Place site. We've had a whole host of different permissions granted in the town centre, which I've referred to before, but many of them have been built out. It's good to see Beals, various permissions been granted for the Beals, former Beals store. Good to see that all the shops in what was the Beals arm in Montague Centre, they're all occupied, I think bar one, which is great to see, although obviously a number of them have relocated from other locations. It's good to see that there is still life, and a number of the outlets that were in Beals have taken up. Riker Shoes are in there as a concession, have now taken a shop outright. It's good to see that. And work starting on the residential flats are going to be created on the upper floors. And obviously the main ground floor being converted into into retail outlets, which is really good to see. So we're also working hard on public realm enhancements. I think you've had Andy Willems before, and you've had updates on public realm. We're looking at starting work on Portland Road. The emerging scheme for railway approaches also coming on to transform railway approach outside of the HMRC building, and it's good to see those improvements taking place. So working with the County Council, looking at about £12 million being spent on really upgrading the quality of our public realm, leading down from the station through into the town centre. And then on the seafront, we've granted various permissions. Alex Hole, who runs the Perch at Lancing, has taken on the Southern Pavilion. He's got permission for creating a large restaurant, cafe, internal alterations to the building, to the listed building, to accommodate a lot more covers. And it's great to see that hopefully work will be starting shortly on that to implement that permission. And just this week, Wednesday's planning committee just granted permission for 134 sprinkler heads to be inserted. So that's the council's application. Many piers, unfortunately, have burnt down. And we are very keen to make sure that nothing like that happens to our gem on the seafront, and that sprinkler system will provide a robust solution for that. We're still working with the original developer for the Pier Bistro. Obviously, Pier Bistro went into liquidation, and we are working with talking to them about whether that development can still happen next year. There is still interest, and it'd be really great to see that come forward, still following the grant of permission. There's a picture of our wheel that, despite the pandemic, went up again this summer. So across Ada, just touch on some of the key sites across Ada, and we are still working with Persimmon Homes in relation to the West Sumpting planning application that's been in with some time. A number of highway changes have been asked for, and they're still working and negotiating with the Highway Authority. They're working up the detail of the scheme. It looks like it might be slightly less dwellings than originally submitted. It was originally submitted at 520, but we're working closely with Persimmon to make sure we get a high quality scheme coming forward. That's probably going to go to planning committee, probably February now. Obviously, there's lots of activity at the Newmarks Farm IKEA site, really important developments there. Carla are charging ahead with building the 600. Well, their initial scheme is for 249 dwellings. They've got detailed permission. They're being built in this corner of the site at the moment, and Newmarks Farm, who are putting all the infrastructure, have just now successfully moved all the Gypsy and Travellers into their new site. So that happened, I think it was Wednesday, that the last Gypsies and Travellers moved onto their new site. Fantastic new site for them, which provides additional pitches for them. They need to be located from this frontage so they can then start work on the new junction onto the A27. So it's great to see that work is proceeding at pace. We secured LEP funding for that project, and a lot of that funding is being used to facilitate the movement of the Gypsy and Travellers, to start all the detailed design work on the A27 new junction. And we've just had the planning application submitted for the fourth arm. Some of you may know that there was quite a lot of concern from Lancing College about the Coombs Road junction and that it wasn't connecting to the new roundabout. And there's a new application that's been submitted to divert effectively Coombs Road to the new junction. And that will be going through the process that's submitted to both the council, Ada, and to the national park. So good news there. We're obviously still having discussions with IKEA. Their agreement is very much that they need the roundabout there for them to start building the IKEA store, and we're still discussing with them. And I suppose the further update on that site, as I've mentioned, is the airport. New owners of the airport we're engaging with them about the 25,000 square meters that was approved at the airport, and they're out looking and talking to potential occupiers for that floor space. Really interesting discussions, and they do recognise the need to have high quality industries moving into those businesses, moving into that new floor space at the airport. So it's good to finally move forward with a new owner of the airport. So in terms of Shoreham, and Neville Presley made mention of some of the Shoreham developments that have been controversial because of the scale and height. This is the Free Wharf development, 540 dwellings. Again, £10 million worth of public funding, helping to pay for the infrastructure for the new flood defence wall, the new public realm areas shown along the frontage of this site. A lot of the groundworks, the new wall has now been installed along the frontage of the site. Developers have had all sorts of issues in terms of viability with contamination and extra costs for the new flood defence, and we're having new applications coming in looking at potentially providing a few more flats and losing some commercial floor space on upper floors. But it's really great news that this development is coming forward and being built out. And we've granted permission for a further 255 dwellings and new enterprise centre down at Kingston Wharf, subject to a legal agreement. That's just an image of the next stage at closer to the harbour mouth. And that's work due to start next year on that site. And again, Homes England are providing funding to help bring forward this the sort of the eastern part of the Western Harbour arm. But it's really the joint area action plan that was signed with Brighton was looking at around 1,000 new dwellings coming forward. And we are now talking to all of the owners of land between this site, Kingston Wharf, and Free Wharf and Shoreham Town Centre. So for what was a 15-year strategy, it looks like we will be bringing forward all of the developments in a timely fashion to make sure that we can get this comprehensive public cycle path walkway along the river and a comprehensive flood defence solution for Shoreham. And lastly is the Civic Center. You will perhaps remember the old Civic Center that has been demolished. We're working very closely with Hyde Housing. They will be submitting a planning application probably next February for this development. Been working very closely with them. They've been to a regional design panel a couple of times. They've had some public consultation, and they'll be looking at submitting an application for approximately 170 dwellings, commercial floor space on the ground floor, and looking at retaining this as a sewer that runs through, but will create sort of attractive public realm areas around the site and through the site as a connection up to the railway station. So really exciting development for next year. And for next year, we know a number of schemes that will be coming forward on the Western Harbour arm. Having detailed discussions, as I say, with all of the intervening landowners. And we are also talking to Persimmon Homes about and the consortium about development at West Durrington coming forward next year. So there's a whole range of applications coming in. We've had a significant increase in applications this year, so our overall fee income has increased significantly as a result of all these major schemes, which is meaning that we're overloaded with work, which is a good thing, but we are also having to recruit to deal with the significant amount of work. And it's good news that in the current sort of economic climate that we can start recruiting